Alright, hello, this is a development primer which I will probably be sending just to a few people that I want to help me work on BYGEN version 10, but I might just make it public as well, just for the sake of being a bit more transparent. I think one of the things I want to do this year is kind of just show people more about the different things I'm working on, but also I think they'll help me to just, I guess, continue finding the motivation to do things. Anyway, so I'm working on BYGEN version 10, finally. It's the first day of the new year, so we're kind of just like trying to kick into the production mindset. So version 10 of the add-on is all about trying to make the add-on more useful. What I mean by that is, like, for version 9, the previous major version, the main point of that version was trying to change the add-on into a content pack system, meaning that we can have modular content packs which can be selected from the dropdowns. BYGEN is all about being able to select objects and apply effects to them. Traditionally, that was done with the modifier stack only, but obviously Geometry Nodes has opened up like a whole world of possibility. The thing is, when upgrading BYGEN to version 9, Geometry Nodes was in this weird phase where it had kind of, I think it had just moved over to the fields version, and there were a lot of somewhat significant features missing, requiring some like workarounds, and the API was also like very weird when it came to like changing parameters in the modifier stack, but everything kind of worked in the end. But because like the major effort for that version was put into just moving to the content pack system, the presets in the official content pack are quite limited in their usefulness. A lot of them are just like repetitive functionality, you know, just distributing different things or just copying over modifier stack effects to the new system. And, you know, like under the structural, there's very limited stuff here. Crystal growth, which is a proximity one, and a couple of wire effects. And under the volume effects, again, we just got like a few of the same functionality and a new one here. So what I kind of wanted to do was replace all the presets, maybe not all of them, but most of them, and approach it from a perspective of actual usefulness. So what that means is having a very definitive and a very useful geometry node starting points for creating new object effects. And we can concept this. So I'm over here in Affinity Designer now. So you'll get an immediate impression of what I'm talking about when I show you this as a concept. So for like the volume effects, we'd start from an extremely simple base and then concepting it like a tree of possibilities, kind of move out and expand their functionality. So you start off with like a distribute points in volume effect, like I have quickly created here. So there's a distribute points in volume effect that's actually in the content pack now for version 10. Thumbnails and everything subject to change. So this is something that people could just quickly apply to an object, and, you know, just for consideration, there are a few parameters on there. So, you know, you could swap between using an instance object. There's some inbuilt features for random rotation and scale. So it'd be nice to consider some default parameters like that. So if someone wants to say, you know, scatter particles around a scene, they could just quickly select an object or multiple objects, you know, choose it from the volume effects and apply to selected. So they don't have to go through creating the whole tree using a node group or setting up all those values. You know, this is all about quickly selecting effects as a starting point and then applying those, and also kind of rapid prototyping as we get into like the higher levels of complexity. So that's fine as a starting point, but what I want help with from specific people that I'm going to be sending this to is branching out that complexity into other useful presets. So for example, like I've kind of just done here, we think, okay, well, we have distribute points. What's the next step we can give to people? What about a kind of plexus-like effect where we have those points, but now we're connecting lines between them? Because then people can do all kinds of motion graphic stuff like that. They could easily animate values. There are things we can expose in the parameters in the modifier stack to help them do that. And then that would be like the next preset along. And then we think, okay, well, maybe we've got that one. And what's another kind of level of complexity we can add to it? What if we mesh in between those kind of plexus lines, for example, and then we add some X parameters for that? So that'd be like another preset we move along to. And you don't need to keep going too far in complexity, right? But it's nice to kind of just use what's already there as a starting point to think of new effects. And the interesting thing is that as we're thinking in terms of leveling up the functionality each time, we're kind of just adding new areas for stylistic possibility. So if anyone wanted to make a new content pack, you know, which they would select from here, like possibly even a paid one because there's money-making potential we can talk about, then if they really wanted, they didn't have to create new effects from scratch. They could just take the ones that were already there in the official one and just stylize them in their own way to create a whole new interpretation of stylistic effects. So in that regard, it'd be nice to try and keep the effects style agnostic and just rather focused on functionality more than anything else, which is again different to how version 9 was done, because in version 9 it was limited functionality but more of a focus on stylistic possibilities, which is why there's just different variations of things to be scattered. So again, you know, you can take a look at different parts in this concepting tree and go, okay, well, maybe if we go back to just the points, what else can we do? Well, what if we like scale the thing's instance on those points in relation to the proximity to other points, for example. Okay, so volume instance proximity scaling, maybe we'll use that as another preset. So does this kind of make sense? It wouldn't just be for volume effects, because if you're familiar with BYGEN, it's been structured in a way that's kind of an artist first design, where instead of thinking of it like a programmer, where we're categorizing things strictly by functionality, we're thinking about it as an artist, where we're categorizing it by physical space, if that makes sense. So we have surface effects, which are things which happen above the surface. We have mesh effects, which are things which happen to the surface. And then we have volume effects, which are things that happen under the surface. So if we're thinking about it in like a physical principle way like that. So the volume effects, which we just spoken about, are all the things which happen inside of an object. And that kind of makes sense with all of those. But then maybe we think about surface effects, okay, which are things which happen on top of a surface. So what could we do for that? Well, obviously, like distribute and volume, the most simplest thing to do would be distribute on surface as our core starting point there. But then, okay, if we move up in terms of complexity for presets, then maybe we can align. I don't know why the text disappeared there. Did I make that disappear? There was text there. Basically just align to surface. And then we could have parameters in the modifier stack for, more creative ways of aligning things on the surface. It'd be kind of using different frames of reference. It'd probably be just taking the normal. But then again, branching off into different areas of logic, having stuff grow on the surface, maybe using the shortest path node, different types of cables, routes, etc. And then again, you're kind of moving into stylistic territory, but you can still keep that style agnostic, maybe just by not using materials, or, you can get creative with it. But also there's like the possibility of voxels, which is something I've been doing a fair bit with in the generators lab content pack. And we do have a couple of kind of useful effects for that, moss and mud here, which basically just add voxelized things. And I think there's a collection object with that. Over the surface. Now, BYGEN supports any complexity of effects. If a geometry nodes tree requires objects to be used and scattered inside of it, like any kind of mesh data, perfectly fine, leave that to me. I'm the logic guy. It already supports that. Also, and this is more important for parametric effects, for example, under mesh and parametric, also structural. I don't have the generators lab content pack installed on this specific version I'm testing, but if you have any ideas for an effect which requires a source object to be selected for it to be applied to, but that source object is required to be reinserted in the geometry nodes tree or the modifier stack in several places, that's also perfectly fine. Like any amount of complexity required by the geometry nodes tree or trees in terms of object references is supported by BYGEN. BYGEN can automatically reassign references fine. So like the amount of complexity in the effect created by a modifier stack is not an issue. So all I need help with for version 10 is concepting these trees, right? So coming up with new ideas for the presets, for useful things which people can use, and then also just creating the node trees for these. I don't necessarily trust myself. I think I would probably get bored if I did it all by myself, but like I know a couple of people who would be brilliant at this, like Ben and Chris in the community, who are already doing so many different complex things that this is just nothing. These are just fundamental starting points, being able to create these presets that could also, I suppose, be put into node trees as well, which we can package. But that's all I'm looking for, just a few experts who have been doing stuff like this already, just to say, hey, this is the best way to get these basic fundamental effects. And I'll go, okay, thank you for telling me the best way as like an expert opinion. I will now do the work of implementing this into the add-on. So basically just trying to get knowledge, demonstrations, examples from the community experts to say, look, we've been using this for weeks, for months. These are the effects we've created. This is the way you want to approach doing a plexus preset or doing, a connective mesh preset or something like that. And then whoever I can get helping out on the knowledge-based side of things like that, I will give a full credit in the kind of info section at the bottom here. Obviously, I'll be doing the rest myself, but I think it'd be kind of stupid of me not to get as much community input as possible, knowing how bad my attention span is. My kind of plan was to study more geometry nodes educational content, and as I'm doing it, create the presets at the same time with the knowledge I'm learning. But again, when there's just so much of a knowledge base available in the community, it would just be stupid blocking that out. So yeah, this is a call for help, and I'm going to be sending this to a couple of people. So those are the two things. If you're watching, help me concept this tree and help me understand the best ways to present these in a GeoNodes tree. So yeah, thank you for watching, everyone. Looks like I've got some other stuff to do and to actually get on with doing more of this work. If you made it to the end, put a DNA emoji in the comments. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one.